Grace and peace to you from the God who was and who is to come. Amen. When I got that lamp on my one and only trip to the Holy Land in the year 2000, it was an incredible experience, and I had two swimming experiences I want to tell you about. One of the best times of the entire trip was when we stayed along the shores of the Sea of Galilee, and at about 10 o'clock at night, a buddy of mine and I decided we were going to go take a swim, and so we walked down from where we were staying, and we waded out into the water, and there we swam, and I was doing the backstroke, just laying it, looking up at the stars in this warm water, and thinking, here I am, looking at the same stars that Jesus and his disciples looked at, and it was this gorgeous night, one of these incredible experiences that I'll never, ever, ever forget. The Sea of Galilee is teeming with fish. That's why all the fishermen were there. It was the source of life for both drinking water, but also for commerce. It was the place around which on one side were all the Jewish communities, and on the other side were all the Gentile communities. It was, in some ways, this little teeny microcosm of the world, and it's not that big. And then later on, I got another swimming experience. We went down to go to the Dead Sea Scrolls area of Qumran and then to Masada, and on the way, if you've ever been there, you know that's where the Dead Sea is. And so I went out swimming in the Dead Sea. Very different experience. First of all, do not go swimming in the Dead Sea if you have a cut. Bad idea. It hurts. And do not get any in your mouth or your eyes. It hurts. When you are floating vertically, when I was in the Dead Sea, I was about this high out of the water because there is so much salt in it. It is the Dead Sea because nothing lives in it. Not a thing. Nothing can live because of the level of salinity. The interesting thing about these two bodies of water is that they're fed by the same river, the Jordan River, which flows out at Caesarea Philippi, right out of the mountain. Beautiful sight. It's where Jesus took his disciples for a retreat. It flows down into the Sea of Galilee, and it flows out of the Sea of Galilee down past Jerusalem and all down the valley all the way to the Dead Sea, which is so low that it has no outflow. And so consequently, as it evaporates, the salinity goes up, and it creates this toxic environment for life. The reason that I'm telling you all about these bodies of water is because it's a visual explanation of what I consider to be the important dynamic of holistic flow for us as human beings. The Sea of Galilee is alive because a beautiful body of water, the Jordan, comes in and water can flow out to the rest of the world. The Dead Sea is dead because it only receives, only takes. All the water comes in, and then it just eventually becomes toxic. This is a metaphor for us, for all of our spiritual living, our financial living, our relationship living. We need to be people who experience both inflow and outflow to be healthy. We have to receive and we have to give. We don't live that way, though, oftentimes. Sometimes you can live as though we can eat what you want and never exercise, and what will happen? You will get disease. Demand love and respect from people and give none in return, and you will be lonely. Come to church to be filled with grace and then offer none to your neighbor, and you will be spiritually constipated. Why would we do this? Because at some level, all of us, myself included, believe in a theology of scarcity. There's only so much love. There's only so much resource. There's only so much power, there's only so much time, and I need to hoard it to myself. But it's just not true. It's just not true. When we think that there's not enough power to share, then we have political polarization. My party no matter what, because there's only so much power to go wrong. Not enough wealth leads to the gap that we have between the wealthy and the poor in the world and how it just continues to grow. Not enough time, that belief leads to a reduction in our sense of Sabbath. Sabbath collapses, and we applaud people who don't take Sabbath, people who want to live balanced lives. Walter Brueggemann says that practicing the Sabbath is an act of resistance to the culture of now that says everything has to be now. It's why I invite you to disengage from our cell phones at the beginning of service, because guess what? Everything will still be going on in 60 minutes. Clearing out spaces for us here at the church. We've been going through a process of taking things out of the office and going through, and I tell you what, we as a culture, our DNA, we're hoarders. We keep a lot of stuff that really, we found boxes from previous pastors that had just been sitting in closets as though they were going to show up again someday and then need all those things, right? So we got rid of them. And when I came back, if you'd have got rid of all mine, which you did, that's okay. Because the guy that I was when I left is not the guy who came back. And we do need to have that clearing out. I've talked to several people. Just yesterday I was having a conversation with someone who talked about how freeing it was to downsize. The liberation of liquidation, that when you get rid of stuff, there's a freeness that happens because we've now have the outflow, and that's important for us. Jesus heals many people, and he teaches many people throughout his ministry, and one frame to put on that healing and teaching is the idea of confronting people who have a theology of scarcity with a theology of abundance. Think about it. You name the story. Almost every story can be framed this way. The most obvious ones. Jesus is teaching. There's 5,000 people plus many, many more who were there. And it says that it came time for lunch. And the theology of scarcity disciples say, we got to send these people away. Jesus, as a theology of abundance practitioner, says, well, what do you have? Well, we got this little boy who's got his lunch. He says, that'll do. That'll do. Because if he shares, they all can share. And watch what happens. They feed so many. Turns out that they had food they didn't even know about. There were baskets full at the end, in abundance. What he was pointing out was how God always is providing more than we think. The problem is our mentality. And Jesus is clearing that for us, helping us to see how rich we really are at all times. When it happens, when today in the gospel, when this brother wants to have Jesus act as judge, that's one of the things that rabbis would do in the first century, is that they would go to him and say, I want you to make a ruling here. Let me see if I can get you to make this ruling. Obviously, he was a younger brother, because the way it worked was that the older brother would have the say about what's going to happen to the family estate. And so if a rabbi said, you should share some more of that, that had some weight, and it would work for this younger brother to get some money. So he's saying, hey, help me out here, Jesus. My brother might not share with me. Can you give a brother a little help here? And then Jesus starts off with this great word. It's translated as friend, but it's kind of a loose translation of friend. It's kind of more like pal. Hey, pal. And he says something that's true and hard to hear for him, but you know what they say, it's better a slap from a friend than a kiss from an enemy. He says to him, be careful about your greed. Your greed's it leads to disaster. Then he tells him this parable. It's the parable of a rich fool. Now, do you recall that Jesus once said that calling someone a fool was tantamount to murdering them? So this is kind of a big word for him to use. But he says about this person, look at the story. It starts off, this person has a problem. What's the problem? The land produced too much. This is no Horatio Alger pulling yourself up by your own bootstraps kind of story. Instead, it's the land that produces too much. That's important to the story because it's God's creation that provides for all of us and always provides enough. But this person's parcel had produced more than he thought, more than he had prepared for, more than his barns could hold. Do you have the problem of too much wealth? Most of us would say no. But you know what? I think we do. I'll be honest with you. I think we do sometimes. Our problem is not that we have too little, it's that we have too much. And so consequently, we don't think about our lives in that context. And so his dumb solution is, I'm going to rent more storage units. Right? That's his dumb solution to his problem. He has too much food that the land has produced in a land where we know that there were hungry people. And his response is, I'm going to figure out how to keep more of it for myself. Why? The theology of scarcity. I might need it someday. You never know, Pastor. We can't give away that thing because someday we might need it. All that stuff, that I do it myself. I have too many surfboards. I do. And when I look to get rid of a surfboard, I have this pain that happens inside me because but I remember when I surfed that one at this one place and it was so great. I might go back there someday, and if I did, boy, I'd hate if I didn't have that. See what I'm doing? I'm justifying why I hoard things. And God says, be careful there. It's a theology that leads to trouble. Someone else might need these things now. The way that the prophet Isaiah said is that the spoils of the poor are in your cupboard. The jacket that the cold person needs is in your closet, next to my 5 other jackets. And so, when I look at this parable, I have to see myself. I am in this same place. And his plan he was set up to be the Sea of Galilee with things coming in and things flowing out, and he chose to be the Dead Sea. Literally now, because what happens is, while he's planning his trip to Branson, Missouri, God calls him home. Says, you're coming home today. And then now, who's going to take care of all your big barns? If you've ever cleared out space after a loved one has died and figured out, what am I going to do with all the stuff? Then you know exactly about what Jesus is speaking. If you've ever had to deal with the excess afterwards, and then we hear the echo from Ecclesiastes. Who knows with those who inherit your wealth? Who knows whether they will be wise or foolish, whether they will be but they'll be master of all, for all of which I toiled, and they will use my wisdom under the sun, and this is also vanity. Do you know how long the average inheritance is kept by the people who receive it before they've spent it all in America? The average is 9 months. 9 months when we inherit stuff. Now that takes into consideration all the small little inheritances too. But that's the nature of inheritance. And that's what this guy wants. I want the windfall, because then my life will feel better. But that's a lie. Because everything that we need for our life to be whole, we already have. That's what the theology of abundance teaches. And that, Virginia, is why we come to worship as a community every week. Because we are a forgetful people, and we are also besieged every single day by the TV and by the internet and by a culture that says the theology of scarcity is the way to go. You better hoard it for yourself. You better take care and make sure you have enough for you. But here, we praise a God of abundance who provides enough for all. Here, we can hear the liberating word that we are not what we own. We are not our 401k. We are instead free to let our finances, our love, our time, our relationships flow. All that comes into us can flow out. And when we do, we find meaning and peace and joy and all those things that money can't buy. And then, just to make sure that we rub it in, Jesus invites us to this table. The table is a symbol of abundance. You come. You come not because you're worthy to come. You come because you're invited to come. You come not because you can prove that you have earned the entrance fee, but instead because God has already paid your entrance fee. And once you get here, you receive. And we all receive the same thing. It's enough. The root word shalom, the root word of that means enough. And sometimes we have to say enough is simply enough. So when we come to this table, that's the message. We receive and we have enough. Jesus demonstrates our proper relationship with all things in these 4 verbs. He takes, he blesses, he breaks, and he gives. That's what we do with all the things that come. Think about that with your relationships. Think about it with your time. Take it, bless it, and then break it and give it. Think about it with your finances. Take it, bless it, break it, and then give it. And so if we do this whole drama week after week, maybe it begins to seep into our souls. It has to work around the constant drumbeat of scarcity that we hear all around us. The noise of not enough causes us to anxiety and fear, which lead to bad decisions and suffering. But if we can learn to trust and be set free from all that weighs us down, we can practice open-handed faith, and so by doing, we can reclaim ourselves as the children of God. We can become a life-giving body of water, where the things that flow in also flow out. And we can reject the powers that would lead us to death and destruction. Amen.